Who is a violin maker's worst enemy? That's what we talk about today. Hello, back again. This is Edgar from Cremona, Italy, and I'm working every day on violins and on myself. Today we talk about working on the thicknesses of the violin, and from the ready instrument you cannot see it. So if you see a violin or a super trooper expert who says, yeah, the thicknesses are well done, you know already he doesn't know anything, because to know that you need a tool, which is something a little bit like this, which can measure the thickness in every point. On a ready-made instruments, it's very difficult to measure these thicknesses. There is the Hacklin magnetic thickness meter, but it's not used very often by many people around. Mainly these people who say, yeah, the thickness are perfect or are too thick or too thin. They just throw a message into the universe without knowing what they're talking about. When we look at the violins, they all look the same, but if you would make them all the same, then you have, in the best case, a violin similar like, let's say, my Scala Perfetta. All these instruments are made all the same way, and there pops out an instrument which works pretty good for an advanced beginner, I would say. If from that stage you want to increase the quality of your instrument, then you have to calm down a little bit. Of course, everything you're working on an instrument is important for the final result. The arching, the model, which gives a certain character, but also the choice of the wood. There is no piece of wood the same one to another, even from the same tree. If you make the instrument while you're making, and your experience which you acquire over the years gives you the ability to decide while you're making it to say, this one I would rather make a little bit thicker, or this one I make thinner. At the very end, you always want that they all sound super great, and that every instrument you build is better than the one you made before. That causes human evolution, okay? And even in violin making, we are in this evolution. So nowadays, I think the violin making is already much better than what the old masters did. But we have a problem that we cannot compare the quality of our instruments with the old masters. Said that, at the point you have to decide what kind of thickness you look at the wood. You work inside apparently unnecessary kind of step of work, and while you do that, you already feel that this wood is responding different than, let's say, the one of my next Stradivari Hellier, and this one is a Guarneri Heifetz. So now, while I'm taking away these holes which I drilled initially, I take it out from this form here. I touch it. Yeah. And I double check the thickness. Yeah. Right here it's like 3.1, 3.2, something like this. This is okay. 2.9, or something like this. Yeah. Tools like this, Stradivari didn't really have. He had something very similar, a little bit like scissors, which on this one side closed the thickness, and on the other side you could see by eye how thick it is. But he had also a tool similar like the drill, which was nothing else like a nail, and he was hammering these into the wood. So he had like this fixture with the nail, and then pam, 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 pam. Nowadays we have something very similar. We have it here. It is nothing else than this nail here down below. You can first put it on 0, then it's on 0, and then you make, like here I made now 2.8 millimeters, and then I can go and squeeze some holes inside, and it leaves some very tiny spots. And these tiny spots then, by making and working, then I can take them away. And then again, I take it out, touch, before, I take it off after, and by working like this constantly, takes hours, and then I have the perfect condition for a great sounding instrument. Anyhow, for those who want to build instruments with this special made tool, you have to make it yourself. But if you don't want to waste too much time, I have it already made in my online shop, and it could be very helpful if you're a maker and you're looking for a tool like this. By looking at these two woods, you actually can see that one has a pretty interesting Haselfichte, and here we have the more regular grown spruce from the Val di Fiemme. By working with this one here, with a very regular grown one, you immediately can tell that the wood itself is a little bit more crunchy, like potato chips. There is a very constant property of the wood which allows you to go a little bit more down. So now when I was drilling these kinds of small holes so I know where I'm working, I just decided already to make this one a little bit thinner than the other one. Here the grain is much larger, but still it's a great sounding wood here, this one. Usually people ask me, how much is the thickness? It really depends on the type of wood, of the model, and of the arching itself. You certainly want that it's vibrating. Right now I can hear it's still a little bit thick, but we're coming closer. I have the impression that I caught the idea pretty well of this wood compared to this one. And by working one next to each other, you also have a little bit more the right feedback, what is what, and if it works well, and you can a little bit compare. So a Stradivari will never become a Guarneri, and a Guarneri never a Stradivari, but both in its character of the outline shape, they should be perfect. So by matching the right thickness, and sometimes even in the right spot, more on the outside where the grain is larger, you have to make it a little bit thicker, and when it's more narrow the ears, you make it a little bit thinner. Within one instrument, upper part, a lower part, outside, inside, that matches already. While you're working, you somehow ask yourself, is this good? Should I attach a little bit more? Should I leave it? Should I go down a little bit? And that's actually what you as a violin maker should do. Now, if you want to know more about the whole thing, then definitely you have to sign up at my Patreon channel. It's a great way to learn this kind of thing. Learning is already the answer of our initial question. The worst enemy of every violin maker is actually the violin maker himself. Because if you just take it for granted what kind of thickness, let's say, an instrument has to have, you block yourself in every further step to learn about what you're doing. Now, these generally thicknesses of a violin, which you get taught by your master in the violin making school, is a great starting point. But then you actually have to decide, and it can't be that it's always the same, because every piece of wood is different. So it's all a question about the violin maker himself, how much he's willing to change, to adapt to new conditions, life condition, working condition, material condition, conditions of the customers who ask specific sound ideas, and as a violin maker you should be able to adapt to these conditions. And that's the crucial part which makes a violin maker who has a lot of experience to be a great master, or just a violin maker who makes things which look like a violin. Out there, the major quantity of violin makers are making nice violins. There are a lot of makers who can survive very well making beautiful instruments. But if you want to make great instruments which are exactly how the customers want their instrument, you have to adapt to the conditions. The conditions of the musician, of the wood, of the arching, the model, all these things have to be put together. So with a certain quantity of experience, you can make super great instruments. And if you're curious of how my instruments sound, you should definitely take the time to come here, or you just write me how we can arrange that you can check out one of my instruments. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Ciao, ciao.